Hey everybody, thanks for watching The Great Green Room. My name is Julia. Today we're going to be looking at the book No One Ever Read, written and illustrated by Cornelia Funke. The book No One Ever Read follows the story of a cute little book named Maury, who has been shelved in quite the wrong part of the library. He desperately wants to be read, but he's been on the shelf for 5 years and no one's ever picked him up. So he edges himself out a little further and is immediately jumped on by his neighbors, who have also never been read. This is Victor, as in Victor Hugo, and this is Jane, as in Jane Austen. And they tell him that he needs to fall in line. And all the other books around him start telling him horror stories about books that they know who have been read and who get left out and get things spilled on them and how awful it is. And Maury says, that's all terrible, but I'm so bored, I just want to be read. Books ought to be read until they fall apart, and all his neighbors are horrified. So finally, Victor and Jane push him off the shelf. And he falls to the floor and escapes out the door and gets chased down the stairs by a cat. And at the bottom of the stairs, he is finally picked up by someone with sticky fingers who writes their name in the front page. And at this point of the book, you realize that Maury is actually Where the Wild Things Are by Maurice Sendak, which I thought was a nice touch. And Maury was very happy to be read by his new owner. So, I've done several reviews of picture books that are pretty weird. And I've liked a lot of them. The one that I can think of off the top of my head is Short Stories for Little Monsters. That one was pretty weird. I really like that. Being weird definitely does not preclude a book from being good, but it can, and in this case, it does. So let me just preface this by saying that Cornelia Funke has written several YA/middle grade books. She wrote the Inkheart trilogy, the Thief Lord, the Dragon Rider series, and I have read several of them, but probably the only one that I liked of hers was the first Inkheart book, which I loved, but the rest of them I really didn't like. So take this for what it's worth. I'm just not the biggest fan of Cornelia Funke already. So I found this book pretty off-puttingly weird. First of all, I found the book people really creepy and not in a good way. Maury was cute, but everyone else kind of was just a little bit, I don't know, I thought it would, I just didn't like it. I found it very off-putting. Also, I know it's silly, but I didn't like that the villains were Victor Hugo and Jane Austen. I found that weird. Why are they the villains? Also, the nervous Nellie, who's telling Maury all these horror stories, is Beatrix, as in Beatrix Potter. So, okay. Also, a lot of the sentence construction was really strange. The story itself I thought was okay. I thought the story itself was pretty cute. He wants to be read, and by the end of it, he finally gets read. But the telling of the story is pretty awkward. Now, Cornelia Funke is German, and most of her books were written in German first and then translated into English. This one was written in English first. So that tells me one of two things. Either the awkward sentence construction is supposed to be awkward, which is weird, or else the editing job is very poor. And neither of those two things are good, in my opinion. So overall, I really didn't care for this book very much. I really wanted to like it, but I just didn't. And again, bear in mind that if you like Cornelia Funke's books already, which I don't particularly, you will probably like this book better than I do. As it is, I'm going to give this book a 2. If you see it at the library, I would recommend leaving it there on the shelf, unless you're already a fan, in which case, of course, you will want to check this out. As always, I want to hear about other things that you're reading. What are your favorite kids' books? What are some kids' books that you really don't like? Thanks a lot for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks, bye.